All right. Salam. How are you? Good to see you. Let's see. Where are we? All right. Trying to remember where we were. All right, Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل عليه في الآخرين وصل عليه يا ربنا في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Bismillah. Bismillah. So we left off on the section, towards the end of the section, where the author was discussing topics related to child rearing. And so we had a lot of comments on that last time, and we went down those angles. And we'll be finishing that up and going to the next section, inshallah. So, tamam. So we left off where he says, "Wa'lam." I have to fight my tendencies sometimes. Sometimes I want to finish things. We're like that. We want to finish things. And I get that feeling inside. And then I tell myself, wait a second. We've been reading this book for over 2 years now. And we're this far. My right hand is the beginning of the book. So if you notice, we're not even halfway yet. So I don't know what the rush is. Might as well just read it, try to benefit, inshallah. So he says, Rahimahullah ta'ala, nafa'anallahu yahu bi'ulumi fi darin. Ameen. He says the following, and may Allah give him and us benefit through his knowledge in this life and the next. Ameen. The knowledge of the author. This is a prayer that we always make when we start reading from something. It says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْأَطْعِمَةَ أَدْوِيَةٌ وَالْمَقْصُودُ مِنْهَا تَقْوِيَةُ الْبَدْنِ عَلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَا بَقَاءَ لَهَا وَأَنَّ الْمَوْتَ يَقْطَعُ نَعِيمَهَا وهو منتظر في كل ساعة وأن العاقل من تزود لآخرته فإن كان نشوءه صالحا ثبت هذا في قلبه كما يثبت النقش في الحجر. It says, know that food is medicine. Know that food is medicine. And the objective behind it is to strengthen the body in its worship of Allah. So the goal behind it is to strengthen the body in its worship of Allah. And that this life, this worldly life, has no permanence to it. And that death cuts off any of its enjoyments. The life that we're in, it doesn't last forever. And whatever it is that we enjoy from it, when death comes, it will cause those enjoyments to cease. And thus, of course, its enjoyments means the dunya's enjoyments. But if the thing that we enjoy is the thing of the akhirah, the hereafter, then inshallah, when we pass away, it doesn't get cut off. And that death is awaiting it every moment. And the intelligent person is the one who takes provisions for the hereafter. And so the one whose upbringing is righteous, then this becomes firmly established in their heart. just like writing on a rock. So they always say that الحفظ في الصغر كالنقش في الحجر. That to memorize something in your childhood is like writing in stone. And to memorize something when you're an adult is like writing in water. And if you memorize it when you're young, it stays. But if you memorize it when you get older, it's much harder. It takes a lot more work. It's still doable, but it's like the tool that you're using is not as strong, and the stone itself has become harder. So it takes more work. But once you carve it, you carved it, you know? But when you're young, it's easier. So he's saying that the righteousness that when it's stamped on the heart of a person when they're in their youth, it stays and is strong. Here we have an important note. But that note needs detail. Now this is not to say what's really good is when someone is raised on righteousness from a young age. That's really good. And does it mean that if someone didn't have that experience that they can't be good? Of course, they can still be good. People still, alhamdulillah, Allah is Allah. And the heart is made to know Allah, and the heart is made to come close to Allah. And people can do all kinds of things in life, and when they turn back to Allah, they turn back to Allah, you know? But when people are connected to Allah from their childhood, it's a very good thing. And, sometimes in our community, we get really excited when people convert. Of course, it's good when people convert. Alhamdulillah, that's a nice thing. Uh, but we shouldn't discount also like the value of people who are raised in Islam. Who are raised like good from their childhood, strong from their childhood. It's different. وفي كل خير. There's good in everything, but like I always say, it's not like a humble thing. It's not like I actually think that I could never be as good as my wife. I'm not talking about particular details, like, okay, you do this thing better, you do that thing better, or so on. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about like an inherent goodness, you know? There's inherent goodness that she has. I can never have it. Alhamdulillah, my parents, they raised us to be decent and stuff like that, but they didn't raise us in Islam. And we didn't have like all the details of what it means to be good. But they have different upbringing, So at the same time, this is where it needs detail. At the same time, there are people who convert to Islam and they have actually been good since they were young. Like maybe they actually, they grew up in religion, for example, and they grew up with good values and they grew up knowing God and all of these kind of things and loving God, but they just didn't know Islam. And then they become a Muslim and it's like, boom, they're already there. You know what I mean? So subhanAllah, the point is that when something is in the heart from an early age, it sticks in a way that's much stronger. And like I said, it doesn't mean that someone's better than someone else or something like that. I only say this because like I just want us to balance it out a little bit. Like it's good to be excited, people convert. But don't like negate the reality of someone who's raised in this too. Someone who, so Sahl ibn Abdullah Tustari, it's one of the early righteous people. He said, I was 3 years old. Okay, this is an example of what we're talking about. He said, I was 3 years old. Sahl ibn Abdullah is one of the most famous people in early Islamic history. He's said, I was 3 years old and I would be awake at night watching my uncle, Muhammad ibn Sawad, praying. I would see my uncle praying in the night. I'm 3 years old. Okay. Then one night, my uncle said to me, why don't you remember Allah who created you? Like, don't you want to remember Allah who created you? So I told him, how do I do that? It's 3, right? I said, how do I do that? He said, say in your heart 3 times without moving your tongue, Allahu ma'i, Allahu nadhirun ilayya, Allahu shahidi. This is similar to what actually came up last night. For anyone who was at the program last night, one of the speakers, I don't remember who it was right now, said something along these lines. I think it was Sheikh Musa actually. Sheikh Musa was saying this. Hafidhahullah. It's always good to see Sheikh Musa back in San Diego. You know, it's never a happy thing when you have talent and you lose it. San Diego, Sheikh Musa is, mashallah, you know. From San Diego, it's nice to have people like that visit and come back. I remember Sheikh Musa from before either of us went to study. Like, you know, probably must have been like 2004 or something. You know, subhanAllah. Back in the days when we used to have like inter-masjid picnics with basketball tournaments and everyone would play. And of course, the Logan Heights Masjid at that time, they had a really good team. Sheikh Musa was a very, very gifted basketball player in high school. Even I think like they went high in CIF, in state championships and stuff. They were very, mashallah, he was really good. So I think he said something along those lines yesterday. So his uncle told him, why don't you remember Allah? He said, what do I do? He said, say 3 times in your heart without moving your tongue. Allah is with me. Allah is seeing me. And Allah is witnessing me. Allahu ma'i, Allahu nadhirun ilayya, Allahu shahidi. Allah is with me. Allah sees me. Allah is witnessing me as my witness. So he says, so first he told him say it 3 times, right? By the way, just a note on this, it's really beautiful to think about. Usually if we do a good deed, even if we're by ourselves and nobody else is around, what happens? It's not a trick question. What happens if you do a good deed, nobody else is around? What's taking place? Sincerity is physically, what's taking place? The actual physical reality of existence, what's taking place? Huh? You get a good deed, sure. It's not a trick question, but it's not an easy question. What's happening is the angels are writing it down, right? We could be completely by ourselves, but we do this good deed. The angels write it down. It becomes part of our deeds, right? What happens if you do a good deed in the heart and there's nothing to show about it except that it was done in the heart? Do the angels write it down? The angels didn't witness it. The angels didn't witness it. It was in your heart. There's no situation. It's only between you and Allah. So this is why, like, sometimes there's worship. Of course, we should do worship. We should do things when nobody else is around. It's good for sincerity. And then we should do things in our heart. It's only between us and Allah. Like, for example, if I sit down, I think about someone who did something wrong to me. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking about it. And then I decide in my heart, I've forgiven this person. At that moment, it's between me and Allah. Right? So he tells him, make this dhikr in your heart, don't move your tongue. That's what he told him, right? His uncle told him. He's 3 years old. He said, say, Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me, Allah is my witness. You can do this in your heart right now, 3 times in your heart. Nobody has to know. If you did it or not, we don't know, right? It's completely with you. He says, so I did that for a number of nights. Then I told him about it. So then he said to me, say it every night 11 times. He's like, so I did that. And when I did that, وَقَعَ فِي قَلْبِي حَلَاوَةً. This is a beautiful expression. It says, I did it for some nights, 3 times. Then he told me, now do it 11 times. By the way, here's something that's interesting, right? It's a side point, but it's interesting. And it's interesting, but it's also extremely important, which is that there's a difference between like informing people about things and guiding people. Okay? What I mean by that is that a person who, like someone wants to grow in their relationship with Allah, you don't necessarily just like throw everything at them. You understand their situation, you talk to them in a particular way, you do what you need to do, right? So his uncle is giving him very particular advice. He knows his nephew, he gives him advice, tells him, now say 11 times. He says 11 times. He says, when I said it 11 times, I started to do it 11 times, then its sweetness came into my heart. Its sweetness came into my heart. And this is again, like it's another layer of things, just that not only do we want to worship Allah, but hopefully we taste some of the sweetness of that worship. And then he said, after a year passed, I said to my uncle said to me, احفظ ما علمتك ودم عليه إلى أن تدخل قبرك فلم أزل على ذلك سنين فوجدت له حلاوة في سري. He says, so my uncle told me, after a year had passed, my uncle told me, it's here is also Arabic, Arabic's tricky. Well, you could read this, say, احفظ ما علمتك. It probably doesn't mean memorize it, right? He's been doing it for a year. It's only three words. Pretty confident that he's memorized it now at this point, right? So what is the other possibility? The other possibility is saying to him, be consistent in this. Guard it. Guard this practice that I taught you. Guard this practice, So he says, so then I did this. He told me, guard this practice and stay upon it until you enter your grave. Guard this practice and stay upon it until you enter your grave. Said, so I stayed like that for years until I found like the deepest sweetness for this in the depths of myself. Depths of myself, I found such a sweetness to this. To the point that my uncle told to me, Ya son, من كان الله معه وهو ناظر إليه وشاهد عليه هل يعصي إياك والمعصية. He said until some time had passed, of course, he's still young, right? He's still young. So his uncle tells him, son, if Allah is with somebody, and Allah is looking at somebody, and Allah is witnessing somebody, will that person disobey him? And then he said, beware of disobedience of Allah. His uncle tells him. He says, وَمَدَيْتُ إِلَى الْمَكْتَبِ وَحَفِظْتُ الْقُرْآنِ. So he's still a child. This is my point. He's saying, he says, so then I went to the maktab, the school, Islamic school, and I memorized the Quran. So this is all happening before he ever memorized the Quran. So what is his formative education? Usually they would go to school and memorize the Quran around like 7, 8 years old. Start memorizing the Quran, and they finish the Quran around like 10. So it's kind of like standard. Many of the older ulama who are alive today, when you read their biographies, this is their biography. It's like he went to school when he was 7, memorized the Quran when he was 10, continued his studies, became a scholar. It's like kind of similar pattern for most of the people. So this is how they would kind of do it, So my point is that his early education from in his home is what? Allah is with you, Allah sees you, and not just telling him that, but telling him a practice so that that becomes inside of him. And he really gets it. And before he's ever gone to school, he tells him, you're not going to disobey Allah. So Allah sees you and so on. So then he goes, he memorizes the Quran. Says, and at that point, I'm 6 or 7 years old. And then I would fast all the time. And my strength that I got was from some wheat bread. And then I would I would pray the entire night. So this is he's led him to this point. He memorized the Quran, he was 7 years old. His food was very simple. He would pray the whole night. He would fast every day or every other day. And then he says, and he has له فضاء عظيمة ذكرها القشيري عن سهل بن عبد الله وأن أمه خلفت له 20 درهما أنفقها في 20 سنة كل سنة درهم واحد وله مناقب جزيلة رحمه الله تعالى. So this is a little story Ibn Qudam is mentioning here. It says, and then his mother left him some money, 20 dirhams. 20 dirhams is not a lot of money, just so we're on the same page, It's not a dinar. Dinar is more, but dirham is very little. Said she left him 20 dirhams. That sufficed him for the rest of his life. He would spend 1 dirham every year. It lasted him 20 years, sorry. 20 years it lasted. He would spend 1 dirham every year, and he had many great qualities. Okay. The point here is that he had a good upbringing, and it was very simple but powerful teaching that he was given. Then he continues, he says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَنْ شَاهَدَ الْآخِرَةَ بِقَلْبِهِ مُشَاهَدَةَ يَقِينٍ أصبح بالضرورة مريدا لها زاهدا في الدنيا فإن من كان معه خرزة فرأى جوهرة نفيسة لم يبقى له رغبة في فرأى جوهرة نفيسة لم يبقى له رغبة في الخرزة أو الخارزة كان فإذا قيل له بيعها بالجوهرة أسرع في ذلك. Okay. واعلم أن من رزقه الله تعالى الانتباه لذلك فإن عليه لسلوك الرياضة شرطا لا بد من تقديمه ومعتصما لا بد من التمسك به وحصنا لا بد من التحصن به. So he says, the person who witnesses the next life with their heart, a true witnessing. They witness the next life with their heart, a true witnessing. Then they become someone who desires the next life more than anything else. And they become someone who does not have a lot of concern for the issues of this life. So the person who has something that's basically not that valuable, and then they see a valuable gem, they're not going to be concerned about the thing that's not valuable anymore. They've seen the gem. And if they were told, give up this thing that's not valuable so that you can get the gem, they'll give up the gem. They don't have any issue with that, right? Because they understand the reality of the whole thing. There's this life, there's the next life. Whatever I have to sacrifice here in order to get to the next life and for Allah to be pleased with me, then alhamdulillah. So then he says, and know that whoever Allah has given an awareness of this to, then they have to do suluk al-riyada, which is what we've been talking about in this whole part, right? If they've been given an understanding of this and they care about this, then they have to take the path of rectifying themselves. Okay, they have to do riyada. They have to try to improve themselves or make themselves better, and that's going to take some effort. As we mentioned before in the beginning of this section, the word that he's using here is used on purpose. It's riyada. If you speak modern Arabic, what is riyada to you? Exercise. It's exercise. So, but physical exercise. People understand it's physical exercise. So what he's been saying in this whole section is, when someone takes their relationship with Allah seriously, then they go through spiritual exercise. Because I want to discipline the self such that I can come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, then if someone realizes this and they're going to make this effort to exercise, then there's a condition that has to be met before they can start training. Okay? And there's something that they have to hold on to in order to train. And there is a protection that they have to take that will basically help them on this journey. Okay, so what are those things? It says, فَأَمَّا الشَّرْطُ فَهُوَ رَفْعُ الْحِجَابِ بِتَرْكِ الذُّنُوبِ. So the first condition of improving one's relationship with Allah is that they remove the barrier that's between them and Allah by leaving their sins. It's the first condition. Okay, do I have things that I do that are displeasing to Allah, that are sinful to Allah, with Allah? If so, then the first thing that I want to do in coming close to Him is I remove those barriers insofar as I can. Obviously, everyone is on a journey, and this doesn't mean that a person has to like fix all of their mistakes in order to start fixing their mistakes, because that really wouldn't really make sense, right? Like that would be circular logic, I think. So you have to do this in order to do this, and you have to do this in order to do this, and you just keep coming back to the same starting point. It wouldn't work. But the idea is, a person has to intend, I want to become better. This actually, as simple as it is, I think, dare I say, that a lot of Muslims don't actually believe this. Either they, or if they believe it in theory, their practice belies what they actually believe. What do I mean? Do I actually believe I need to become better? If I actually believe that I need to become better, then there's certain manners that I'm going to follow. There's certain effort that I'm going to make. There's a reality, and there's commitments that I'm going to take. There's sacrifices that I might make that say, you know what, actually, I do think that I have mistakes, And I need to work to improve those mistakes. So I'm going to look for ways to do that, for example. And there's a lot that could be said about this, but just sit with that one a little bit. I need to at least believe this. And by the way, like even the greatest people, they believe this. That's what makes them great. If they didn't believe this, they wouldn't be great. But you'll meet like the most incredible people, and they're really convinced, like, I'm a person, I have a lot of sins. I have a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of things that are wrong. They're unacceptable, so on and so forth. They still, of course, are acting in the world because just because I do things wrong doesn't take away from the obligations that are in front of me. I still have to commit, still have to do certain obligations, right? So both things can be true. We understand it sometimes, like someone understands that they believe that they have shortcomings and mistakes, so they just like sit in a corner and wallow and don't do anything. No, so if I have a lot of mistakes, which I do, doesn't change the fact that there are certain obligations I still have to fulfill them. You know, so but to have this condition in the heart is very important. Number two, one of the things I always tell people, there's some things I love about reading from books. Okay. One of the things why I love to read from books rather than give lectures. When you give a lecture, you choose what you're going to say, right? And you kind of like by necessity, you choose certain things and you leave out other things, right? And so you do that over a period of time, you end up with a lot of things that have been talked about and a lot of things that haven't been talked about because you didn't finish something from beginning to end. When you finish it beginning to end, it forces you to talk about all kinds of things. It also makes it so that like you can say certain things, like this next sentence, if I was to say this sentence just sitting by myself, it sounds self-serving. Potentially, maybe potentially, not in reality, potentially self-serving. But we know that we've been reading for 2 years. Like I'm just reading what's in front of us. Right. So the second thing that's necessary, فشيخ يدله على الطريق لأن تختطفه الشياطين في السبل. So the second thing that's necessary is a sheikh who will guide the person on the path so that the shayateen don't snatch him up on the trail. Means that, okay, person sets out, say, I want to come closer to Allah. They have this goal, this destination. I always use the imagery of a mountain, right? They have this destination. Because alhamdulillah, in California, we have mountains. If anyone hasn't lived somewhere else, you don't know that this is a blessing. You know, always people visit from like the Midwest and stuff, and they're like, wow, subhanAllah, mountains, you know? It's like, it is an amazing thing. You have a mountain, all of us are at the bottom of the mountain, right? And we look, we say, we want to get to that peak on the top. And then you're like, okay, so how do we do that? This person's like, well, there's this trail, there's that trail, there's this other trail. There's a number of trails. Some of them are short, some of them are long, some of them are demanding, some of them are less demanding. Then there's other people who are like, I'm not even going to take a trail. I'm just going to go to the top. You know, I don't need a trail. And then there's like, well, you know, but then there's these people like they've been taking this trail. They know the trail really well. And it's a little bit dangerous. Like, you know, there's mountain lions, there's this, there's that, there's poison oak, and there's rattlesnakes, and there's all these other kinds of things. But like if you have an expert guide, then the guide will tell you, okay, when you see the rattlesnake, you do this. When you see the mountain lion, you do this. Maybe they like have they're friends with the mountain lions. I don't know, whatever, right? They can handle the trail. The point is, everyone's trying to go to the same destination. There's many different ways to get there. So what he's saying here is that the person sets out on the path. They're trying to get to the top of the mountain, and they need a sheikh who can guide them, because otherwise the shayateen are going to come and they're going to pick them off the trail. Pull them here, get them distracted with this, get them distracted with that, put their focus over there, burn them out over here, tell them something they don't need to pay attention to, you know, start giving them all the details about everything that they don't need to know. It's like once they get a little bit higher, their legs have been developed a little bit, then you can talk to them about the details. They don't need to know about it right now. There's all kinds of things that the person who's walked the trail, they know how to do it. Without it, it's very difficult. This is pretty much agreed upon in Islamic history. It's really funny how, I mean, why do we have hesitancy around it? It's also very simple. Why do you have hesitancy around it? Maybe because the guide industry got corrupted, you know? The guide industry got corrupted. Some people are making money off it. Some people are selling things along the way. Some people are doing it for their own ego so they can be called like the guy who takes pictures with all the people who climb the mountain, whatever else it might be. And they're not actually good at what they're doing. And so they take your money, they take your time, they misguide you, they take you in the wrong way, they do all of these kind of things. And so now, then you have all these conflicting things. Like, yeah, I recognize that I need to grow. And I recognize that I need help in that. But I also see all these people who took advantage of people who are trying to grow. So like I'm really hesitant around it. Of course. It's a reasonable consequence. I mean, and so that's why this thing is so serious. وأما الحسن فالخلوة وعليه من الوظائف مخالفة الهوى وكثرة الذكر والاقتصاد في الأوراد. And the thing that kind of like protects them, this is a challenging, is khalwa. Khalwa is like when you take some time out with Allah. It has a variety of meanings depending on how it's used. So like the most basic understanding of what khalwa is when you're alone with Allah. Okay. Throughout history, khalwa became used for different things. Like there is a formal khalwa where like a sheikh will tell someone, go and sit here by yourself for the next 7 days or 10 days. And of course, do your salat and all those kind of things. But the only thing you're doing other than that is saying la ilaha illallah. I don't know. I'm just saying something, you know? And the idea behind that is that in that time, they will face internally what they need to face, and they will overcome it through the worship that they're doing, and then that will elevate them in their relationship with Allah. This was very common historically, like people did this historically. Like, I think it's still there. So anyone from Sham? Any Sham? Maybe you know. Oh, yeah, Dr. Bilal, maybe you know. Is the Khalwa of Imam al-Nawawi? I think there's a Khalwa of Imam al-Nawawi in Jami' al-Umawi. Is it like a known thing, or maybe I'm mixing up the details? Is there some Khalwa in Jami' al-Umawi? Yeah, I don't remember who it was. But like Jami' al-Umawi is like one of the 4 or 5 major masjids of Islam, you know? There's Mecca, there's Medina, there's Al-Aqsa, there's Jami' al-Umawi, there's Azhar. Like these are the 5, 6 major masjids of Islam that were like centers of learning and knowledge and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, there's a khalwa in Jami' al-Umawi where like certain famous people that we know throughout history, they used to go there. So my point is that this is a thing. Does someone have to do that in order to do that? Not necessarily, you know. Sometimes a job that you have for a certain period of time can be your khalwa. The city that you live in for a certain period of time can be your khalwa. Responsibility that you have could be your khalwa. A lot of things can be your khalwa. It forces you to like really focus on what you're doing. And you can't do a whole lot of other things. And then you have to grow. You have to grow in that time. So my point is that, but there has to be some in that, then they're going to not follow their desires. Huh. It's really interesting, the wording here. I wasn't going to go into it, but I'll say something about this. If it doesn't make sense to you, just keep it moving. Don't worry. Not everything has to make sense all the time. كثرة الذكر والاقتصاد في الأوراد. It's very interesting he mentions these two together. So he says they make a lot of dhikr, but they're economical when it comes to their awrad. Okay? But the awrad are dhikr. So the awrad is like a plural of wird. Wird is like a certain recitation. Usually it has a purpose that has been given to someone to use in their worship. But dhikr is more broad. It's like la ilaha illallah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, subhanallah. It's not really parameters around it. So he's saying that in this, when they're in those times, they make a lot of dhikr, but they're intentional with their awrad. If I had to take a gander as to what that's related to, which I don't have to, technically. I could just move on. But maybe I'll just move on. Unless someone's like, are you understanding what I'm saying and you actually want to know? If not, I'll just move on. Okay. So the thing here is that dhikr in general has benefit, of course. Dhikr has, to remember Allah has benefit. To remember Allah in a certain way is usually it's powerful for a particular thing. And the Prophet ﷺ gave this to people, by the way, in case you're thinking this is like some, some sort of thing that doesn't. Even the example that he gave of Sahl ibn Abdullah, his uncle told him, say it 3 times in your heart, right? Don't go beyond that. He didn't tell him, say it 3 times in your heart, and then an hour later, say it 3 times in your heart, then an hour later, say it 3 times in your heart, so 3 times in your heart only. And after that, 11 times. So he's taking them because this is going to have like a certain effect on him. And so if you keep repeating it, it can overwhelm the person. They weren't meant to be overwhelmed by it. You know? Sayyidina Ali, the Prophet ﷺ, when Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidah Fatima, they wanted a servant, and the Prophet told them no, basically. And then he said, I'll give you something that's better than that. Every night before you go to sleep, say Subhanallah 33 times, and Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. He gave this to Ali and Fatima. They say this was the secret to Sayyidina Ali's strength. That he was given this by the Prophet ﷺ, and he stayed on that for the rest of his life. But did he say, you know what? The Prophet told me 33, 33, 34. What I'll do is when I go to bed, I'll do 33, 33, 34. And then if I don't fall asleep, I'll do it again. And then an hour later, if I'm still not asleep, I'll do it again. And then, you know what? This is really good. I think when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll do it again. And then I'll wake up right before Fajr and I'll do it again. He didn't tell him to do that. He told him, do this thing. This thing will have this benefit, right? But if he was to keep doing it, then it can overwhelm the person. And if the person becomes overwhelmed, then it is possible. That's why the whole khalwa thing is like a very tricky topic historically. Because again, like imagine now you have a guide who's not wise, gets excited, decides he's going to put you in khalwa, and you lose your mind. It's very possible. I mean, there's a reason why different international bodies consider solitary confinement to be torture, right? Because if you're placed in solitary confinement for a certain period of time, people do actually lose their mind. So if the sheikh puts the person in solitary, they're basically putting them in solitary confinement, right? And they're not knowing what they're doing, it can be very, very dangerous. So anyways, this is now what was meant to be really simple. It's turned into a big mess. Have to have some time alone with Allah. Simple translation. Have to have some time alone with Allah, okay? ومنتهى الرياضة أن يجد قلبه مع الله أبدا. طيب. Basically, what it's saying is that the goal of the person is that they want their heart to always be with Allah. How do they make it so that their heart is always with Allah? That they get accustomed to being alone only with Allah. That's the point of the being alone thing. So that you get used to being alone with Allah and nobody else. Some people, it can break them. Some people, they're like, this is great. I guess it's just me and Allah now. You know, so it's a different kind of thing. But they do that over time and with effort. Okay? Alhamdulillah. Finish the section. New chapter. New chapter is, this is one of the biggest chapters in this text and of course in the Ihya. Kitab Kasr al-Shahwatain. Shahwat al-Batan wa Shahwat al-Farj. Farj. Okay, so this is the chapter on the breaking. It's called the breaking of the two desires. The desire of the stomach and the desire of the private parts. Okay, we'll try to be strategic how we talk about it. So basically, the breaking of one's carnal desires. All right. He starts off. He says, "شهوة البطن من أعظم المهلكات وبها أخرج آدم عليه السلام من الجنة من شهوة البطن تحدث شهوة الفرج والرغبة في المال ويتبع ذلك آفات كثيرة كلها من بطر الشبع. So he says the desire of the stomach is from the greatest of the destroyers, the muhlikat, the things that destroy the person. From the greatest of the things that destroy the person is the desires of their stomach. You know, we, as people who live in the time that we live in the place that we live in, it's not that we're worse people, you know? Alhamdulillah, I think people are really good, actually. The challenges we face, though, are unprecedented. Like, when in human history have we had the options that we have in food? Have you ever really thought about it? Like, even sometimes if you come from some place that has small villages or something like that, you might have some understanding of this. But if you're in a small village or something, you don't have a whole lot of options. You know what I mean? Like, even where my mom is from, the food generally, historically, extremely simple. It's basically like you got some fish, you got some root vegetables, you're pretty much done. You know, and you're gonna try it, and you don't even have spices. Like you have salt and some pepper, and like black pepper maybe, but mostly salt and root vegetables and fish. It's very simple food, right? The choices that we have are insane. Even if we're talking about like good food in the sense that it's decent food. Then you add on top of it chemically engineered indecent food that is completely unprecedented, that is completely designed to manipulate the biology of the person so that they can be addicted to it. Like all of these candies and these sweets and these sodas and all this. People never had experience with these kind of, like, they didn't even have to fight that battle. You know what I'm saying? Like, the battle of your stomach is a different battle when all you have is stuff that has no flavor and 4 options. That's one battle. It's a whole different battle when you have all kinds of things in front of you and you can choose from them anytime you feel like it. And you go on Yelp and it tells you, well, this one only got 8.7 out of 10. This one got 8.9. And they have all these options and so on. So imagine like the jihad that you have to make against the stomach. It's really serious. وَقَلِيلٌ مَنْ يَنْتَبِهِ ذَلِكَ. Very, 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 very few people are actually paying attention to this. Even people of knowledge. Like it's not uncommon to sit with people of knowledge and they talk about food. I'm not saying that I'm free from this. We make mistakes but actually I've never heard my shuyukh talk about food. I can't think of a time I've ever heard them talk about food. Other than like, thank you, the food was delicious, you know? Or I have medical issues I need to pay attention to, so I can only eat particular things. You know, like I'll eat this, I won't eat this. That's the extent of the food. It's not like, oh, I heard there's a new restaurant and I'm not saying everyone has to live like that, but I'm just saying like the idea is the foundational issue here that he's spending the entire section on is the issue of the danger of the stomach. And he's saying that the danger, and I'm not, why did I say all this? Because I'm not saying that we're like so bad. We actually are facing challenges. Nobody's faced them in all of history. The smartphone is a challenge to the self that nobody has faced in all of history. Like the difficulty of this fitna on the nafs is incredible. It's not, again, take it back to like the core issue here. The core issue is I want to develop myself and my relationship with Allah. The entire premise of the smartphone and everything that's on it is to take over your nafs. It's so that it owns your nafs. You don't own it anymore. You do whatever it tells you to do, right? So these are challenges like if someone can just control their food a little bit and control their phone usage a little bit, they're probably like an amazing person. That's the time that we live in, subhanAllah. Like if they could just do those 2 things, they're going to be amazing. The stuff they can do, the things they can think about, the way their mind will function, is completely different human being at that point. SubhanAllah. So anyways, So the first thing is the desire of the stomach. And it is from the greatest of the destroyers. And it is what took Adam alayhi salam out of paradise. And from the desire of the stomach, other desires are born. Two of them being the desire of the private parts and the desire of money. Okay? Yes. What the balance is? Battle. Yeah, the battle is people are addicted to food. Yeah. And their whole life revolves around food. If on rare possibility that someone really actually just like really deeply feels inside of themselves, like subhanAllah, that Allah gave us all of these things. He gave us all of these plants, we make these spices from them. He gave us all these foods, we make different dishes from them. And I want to learn these dishes so that I can be excellent in the way that I cook, so that I can bring happiness into the lives of other people and help them to live healthy and happy lives and be generous. If that's what someone's intention is, then alhamdulillah. But then they won't overeat. And overeating in Islam is not 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I mean, technically, that's beyond that is overeating. The absolute 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is overeating. Meaning the hadith that says 1/3 for air, 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, that's the further limit. Hadith says that it's sufficient for the child of Adam to have a few pieces of food to keep their back straight. It's the actual wording of the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. It's sufficient for the son of Adam to have a few pieces of food, to keep their back straight. And if they must eat more than that, then 1/3 for food, 1/3 for liquid, 1/3 for air. That's why many scholars said it's haram to go beyond this point. Not just like disliked or something. It says haram. And they said it's haram because you're wasting and you're harming yourself. Of course, there can be exceptions and so on, but as general rules. So if that's the person's intention, which, that's beautiful. But I think that most people, the issue is that we sit down and we eat a bunch of things that we shouldn't be eating, and we eat more than we should. That's most people, And when we do that, that becomes like, and that's the thing, also repeats itself all the time. Especially like now, we have even the idea of snacking, by the way, like snacking is a really fascinating thing. Used to be like people, there's a food time, you sit down and you eat. If it's not food time, you don't eat. It's not like you eat all day. We eat all day. It's like fascinating situation we have here. And then that will lead to the two other big ones. The two other big ones is not being able to control one's physical desires and their relationship with money. Both of them are a kind of like consumption. That's what this all starts with the consumption of the stomach. And from those three then come all kinds of other illnesses. Other kinds of ailments come, they all come from those three. The source of all of them is the consequence of satiety. Consequence of satiety. Um, it's interesting. We're not going to get to it today. Should probably stop actually. But I'll read this one or two hadith. Oh. Uh, okay, so I'll read these couple of narrations, then we'll stop. We'll continue from next time. What he's going to get into next time, which is interesting, is going to say that there are certain people who, in the name of spirituality, they went to extremes with regards to neglect, like prohibiting themselves food. And he's going to say that that's not really the way. Ibn Qudama in general, his approach to spirituality is very balanced. It's not very extreme. So it's kind of nice. So there's two hadith in the statement. The hadith, the first one is the Prophet ﷺ said, the believer eats with one stomach, and the disbeliever eats with 7 stomachs. The believer eats with one stomach, and the disbeliever eats with 7 stomachs. course, what does this mean, and so on and so forth. And obviously, people will come and they say, listen, I'm a medical student. We look at human bodies all the time. Everyone has one stomach. We see believers, we know that, okay? Everyone has one stomach, you know. Same thing with the heart. One time someone came up and they're like, the heart, he's like, the heart, it's just an organ. It's flesh. I'm like, pretty sure everyone knew that, you know. But the stomach is one, means the idea behind it is what? If a person eats and they mention the name of Allah, should we cover this in the etiquettes of eating before? They eat, they mention the name of Allah. They have gratitude to Allah. They have intentionality when they're eating. They eat in good company. They follow the different etiquettes and so on and so forth. Then the amount that they eat should be much less. The person who doesn't have gratitude, they don't remember Allah, they don't know the responsibility of their food, you know, all of these kind of things, then when they eat, they're going to eat a lot more. That's the idea. Then in the other narration, what actually, alhamdulillah, we just said it. Actually, I left off the beginning. SubhanAllah, I was focused on the before the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and I missed what's before that. What's before that in the narration is the son of Adam does not fill any vessel worse than his stomach. Son of Adam does not fill any vessel worse than his stomach. It's sufficient for them to eat small pieces, ukulat, small amount of food that keeps their back straight. And if it has to be more than that, then 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. I think it's fair to say that a lot of issues related to health revolve around this. A lot. I'm not a physician, and I don't want people to get mad at me because I'm out of my lane, but I think this is pretty accurate. Would you agree that it's accurate? People who are specialists, or if I'm wrong, tell me. 100%. Alhamdulillah. And the last statement is Uqba al-Rasibi. He said, I entered upon Al-Hasan, and he was eating. And Hasan here is Al-Hasan al-Basri, most likely. Hasan al-Basri is from the generation after the companions. And he's from like the most senior people of that generation, and widely regarded as one of the like most righteous people of his time. Okay? So this man says, I entered upon Al-Hasan and he was eating. And he said, join me. So I said to him, I ate to the point that I can't. Like I can't eat anymore. So he said, Subhanallah. أو يأكل المسلم حتى لا يستطيع أن يأكل. He said, Subhanallah. A Muslim eats to the point where they can't eat anymore? He's like, how could that even be the case? You know, you ate, that means you should have space. Like, if you stopped eating, it means you had space still. You're supposed to stop eating when you still have space. So now you're coming and I'm telling you to join me. You shouldn't be saying, I can't have anything. It's not possible. Subhanallah. Okay, so we'll stop here. Sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Any questions or comments? Now's where things get serious. It's like what Sheikh Musa also said yesterday, that sometimes people want like all of their spirituality to be very pretty and like cosmetic. And then sometimes your spirituality has to like get in the trenches a little bit. Food is where it gets in the trenches. It's like, it was all nice until you start talking about that. Like I just kind of still want to do my thing when it comes to food. You know? I can do the prayer and everything, but don't touch my food, you know. It's fun. Yes.
So, just to clarify on the statement about the whip, is the author trying to say that the specified awrad to do should be just something limited and something you can definitely do every day, but then the dhikr that you do, like you should just be continuous in it, and it should be like kind of spontaneous, that you keep doing that. Is that the
Yes.
goal of that?
So the question is, the whole thing about the wird and the dhikr, is it saying that the wird that you do should be, how'd you say it?
Like, limited such that you're
Limited and focused, and you're able to do it, you can do it consistently every day. And the dhikr is more open-ended, yes, basically. And that's the case with these things. The wird should be short, strong. It's like a treatment, you know? You don't have to go on a 10-day cycle for everything. You don't have to take like the most difficult medicine for everything. Sometimes you just need a specific treatment, take the treatment, move on. Yes. That's what's fun. The wird doesn't have to be daily, no. Reading Surat al-Kahf every Friday could be a wird. You could say that. But that's probably not what he's talking about here. Just to be like, what he's talking about here is probably more like, you know, shuyukh of these things will often have many different wirds for different things. So they're like beyond what's usually in the sunnah. Or maybe beyond's not the right word. In addition to what's directly in the sunnah or something like that. Yeah, something like the word of Imam an-Nawawi, or the Hizb of Imam an-Nawawi. Yeah. It's like very particular, right? So you don't just like sit and read the Hizb of Imam an-Nawawi over and over again. You guys haven't seen it. It's published. Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah published it, translated it and did an introduction to it. But it's like a daily devotion of Imam an-Nawawi. And it's, you know, it's very particular. It's not like I haven't memorized it, so I can't tell you. But you'll find it online. Yes.
Should be a condition. A lot of people, I mean, this day and age, it's hard to find out. Classification by numbers.
That's a really good question. So how do we approach finishing food? Yeah, I mean, this is again one of those modern our society problems. Even in other places, it's not a problem in the same way as it is in our kinds of societies. Because, you know, in other places, it's very easy to not finish food and just take it to someone and give it to them. Here, it's San Diego actually might be easier than a lot of other places, actually, because of the homelessness problem. But it's harder. I think we have to do our best and sometimes be creative a little bit. If you have like a home or something, I know some people in our family, they had a home that like the back of the home was kind of like almost like an open space. So they know if they have leftover food and they throw it there, animals will eat it. Like the birds will eat it, coyotes might come and eat it, something will come and eat it, you know? So to be creative a little bit and do our best. I would say it's preferable to have a different solution than overeating. I know that kind of tends to be like, well, I have to finish it, you know? It's a finish the plate phenomenon, you know? Where does the idea of finishing the plate come from? Comes from our parents, yeah. But why does it even exist in the first place? Huh? Don't waste food, but why? Why is it even happening? We talked about it a week or two ago, I think. Like, what could you do that if you did it, you wouldn't have this problem anymore? Don't put too much food on the plate. Yes, that's of course number one. Portion control, yes. Number two. Eat together from one plate. Eat together from one plate. Nobody's responsible for finishing their plate. You know? Well, we're worried because then they're not going to eat what they're supposed to eat and so on and so forth. Don't feed them again. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying, like, you know, like my mom, she's always laughing at us. She's like, I don't know what's up with you guys, you know? She's like, it didn't work like this when we were kids. It was like, if someone put food on the table, we were grateful that we had food and we ate whatever we could. And that was it. There was no discussion around it. There was no like, I like this, I don't like that, so on and so forth. That was completely off the table, pun intended. But Like, but if you eat from the same plate, you don't have that issue. It's everyone's leftovers now. But yeah, if we can solve it by not overeating, I think it would be good. One of the things my mom does if she eats out, usually, may Allah guide her. She has a lot of good qualities. May Allah guide her. Usually if she's eating out, and I've seen her do this for decades. As soon as she orders her food, she'll split it in half, and she only eats half of it. The other half she takes to go. She's like, then I don't overeat, and it makes economic sense. Whereas if I don't split it in half, it doesn't make sense economically either, It's horrible. Okay, what else? We had all kinds of rules for eating out when we were growing up. Most of those are from my dad. My mom did this one. My dad had rules too. Not allowed to order any drinks. There's no appetizers, there's no dessert. So only the meal. It was the only way to make eating out like something that's reasonable to do. Of course, you only do it every so often and stuff like that. But it makes a huge difference. You guys haven't paid attention. Like if you just go and only order the food, no drinks, no appetizers, it makes a huge difference. Whatever, I'm not telling you what to do, Everyone make a decision with what you have. If you're like, no, I want to do this, I like to have my drink. Okay, have your drink. I'm not like judging you or something. I'm just telling you what we used to do. And like I said, when you learn it from a young age, you can't break it. Like up to today, I'm like, my wife's the opposite. She's like, you go out, you order a drink, you have dessert. So she orders a drink, she has dessert. I just sit there, have my water. Can't break my habit. It's funny. Yes. My mother's from Newfoundland. Newfoundland, so-called Canada. It's a big dispute. Big dispute on whether or not Newfoundland is Canada or not, amongst the elders. It's a funny thing now. It's like one of those things where that generation's dying off, but it used to be a big debate because Newfoundland, it's an island off of Canada. It officially joined Canada, I think it was 48 or 49. And the vote was really close. So a lot of the old timers are kind of like, yeah, they cheated that vote, and we're not actually part of Canada. That's the mainland. It's a different country. And this is our own country. We have our own way of doing things. We have our own culture. We have our own language. It's true, actually. Like Newfoundland it's different than the rest of Canada. Of course, it's similar too, but it's different. Yeah. So you have like a separatist bend there a little bit. But she's from there. My dad is from Pakistan. They have their own way of speaking English. Yeah. Yeah. It's like really extra. It's very unique. Again, like these things are dying off. But if you get people who are like elders who grew up in a world that was still disconnected, because Newfoundland was people only, well, the people who are currently there, they lived there because they were fishing. So there's a bunch of fishing villages that were largely disconnected from each other. So even each village has like, they say that there were over 360 independent dialects in Newfoundland. It's a small place in the first place, but like each little town have their own way of using English. It's kind of like a British Irish mix. Like me, I can't say it. No. I mean, it's basically like Irish people. If you look it up on YouTube, you'll find stuff. Actually, you find a lot more stuff on Instagram, not on YouTube. YouTube doesn't have really good videos on this, but you'll find some stuff on Instagram. But it's really fun. They're actually a people who they really care about language. They really care about communication. And they communicate with each other in a very unique and beautiful way. Like you really focus when like even up to today, when we visited our family in Maine, like if you're talking to my cousins, you really have to pay attention because they're going to make jokes, they're going to play on words, they're going to delete things from the sentence, assuming that you're paying attention enough that you can fill in that blank, so you have to kind of like really be on your toes. Um, this is very social, very, mashallah, very traditional in a sense. Yeah. Yeah.
That there's fine. He would spend it like, and he's a simple, the thought of spending. It's just maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So you want me to explain that? Yeah. 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 That's good. So Assalamu alaikum. So the issue is, to put it like very simply, we're responsible for our actions. And there's a point at which our thoughts become actions. And if our thoughts are actions, then we're responsible for them. So, give you an example. Very simple example. You're at a store and you pass by someone, I should make it maybe cleaner. You interact with someone and a thought passes through your head that, oh, this person only interacted with me this way because they're arrogant. Okay? This in general would be haram thought as a concept. So when it first passes through the head, we're not responsible for it if it's still passing. If it comes into our head and then we sit with it and we entertain it, like, yeah, actually, you know what? They really are arrogant. And they're arrogant because of this and this and this and this. Now this is haram. And we're responsible for it. Yeah. So this unfortunately gets explained with too little detail a lot. People are like, you're not responsible for your thoughts. Of course you're responsible for your thoughts. Like if you think about it, like you're telling me someone could sit around all day long and just like fantasize whatever they want in their head and they're not responsible for it? Of course they are. Someone could sit around all day long and be like, you know what? It would be really cool to like, oh, I shouldn't say this stuff. It's being reported still. So take a different example. I don't know. Like, yeah, man. Like there are things we're not supposed to think them. And if we're not supposed to think them, if it's at the point still where we can't really control it, which is like a passing thought, things come into the mind, things come into the head, whatever. That's one thing. But if we engage with it, that's something else. There's different words for all these in Arabic. That's why you get mixed up. Like khatira is different than fikr, is different than what's the other one that they use? Hamma. Like the verse, the hadith that says that the person who intends to do good, hamma, like they have an internal ambition to do it. They've basically decided to do it. So they made a decision internally and then do some good thing, and then they weren't able to do it, they're rewarded as if they did it. But it wasn't just like an idea passed through their head. They're like, oh yeah, that'd be a nice thing to do. And then they went on with their life. It's more like, oh yeah, that is a good thing to do. I want to do that thing. And, now this is rewardable. Some things are rewardable also. Go ahead.
Very.
Yeah. So if you have a tendency to negative thoughts, it's hard to control. It's very true. Like the way I grew up, you judge people all the time on everything. That's how we grew up, like actually you're looking for more things to judge them by so that you can make fun of them for it. Like this is the school that, this is what's happening. You grow up and you go to school here. So you do. You look for any possible way to make fun of somebody And so you're going to judge them on everything. And it's really hard to break, subhanAllah. So, but this is the whole point of this whole section about the heart and disciplining the heart and breaking these things and so on and so forth. The first step is to recognize that I have this, I do this, you know? And then that awareness is what enables us then to take other steps. So we take this awareness. Another step would be like, then every different types of issues have different kinds of interventions. We'd call it. It's very similar actually to the language they use in mental health. Like you have certain tendencies, and then there's interventions that you can use in those tendencies so they don't become habits that are dysfunctional. You know, it's like, it's very interesting. So it depends on what it is. If I find that I'm like being really negative towards people, some of them they can be inward facing, some of them can be outward facing. Like I could tell myself, well, you don't know that much about the person actually. Or maybe you don't have the whole picture. Or I should make some sort of excuse for them. Or I don't know. So it can be inward, it can be outward. Some of them can just be interrupting a pattern. Like, oh, I'm doing this again. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. By the time I disrupt it, now I've moved on from it. And then when I see it happen again, then I disrupt it again. So there's different ways that all of this can be done. Yeah. It's good. Good questions, mashallah. Yes, Musa. So if you're dealing with someone who's like an oppressor, they act in certain bad ways all the time, and then you have an interaction with them, and they act in a way that's consistent with their usual behavior, and you feel that it's arrogant or whatever it is, it's still in the same case. It's different, obviously, but you know, there's 2 points here. One of them, it's not exactly related, but it's somewhat related, is that we really need to embrace the idea that I can believe that something is wrong without coming to a final judgment on the person who's doing it. Okay, so that is possible. Like I can see something from someone and say, this thing that they're doing is wrong, without coming to a judgment on are they arrogant or not, for example. You know, the judgment on the person is secondary, but the behavior can be judged. Behavior, this thing is wrong, it's unacceptable, has to be dealt with, has to be responded to, has to be stopped, whatever else, right? So we have to like split this thing in our head. We have a really tough time with this. Should I say what I'm thinking? It's really bad. It's not really bad. It's really sensitive. I believe that part of this comes from our inability to accept that our parents do things wrong. And because we can't reconcile between I have to treat them well and I have to have respect for them and obey them and all of these kind of things, and they've done things that are wrong, and I can't reconcile it, so I just make it as if they haven't done something wrong, and that's how I don't judge them. But no, I can split. I can say this thing is wrong, and I'm still going to have respect for the person. I'm still going to interact with them in a certain way, and so on. But when we accustom ourselves to this from a young age, not being able to accept truth as truth, then it blurs things later on. I've seen this in community work. Allah help us. Allah really help us. So because we should be able to do this. But I've known like people really can't do this. Like sometimes I've been in places like in the Majlis, we talk about this all the time, this issue of like separating this thing so that we can have this interaction. People have heard me, I've dealt with people, they've heard me say this for years. And they still can't do it. And I know because they keep asking the same question. That they can't split the two. Where I can accept that this thing is wrong and not judge the person. You know? So that's number one. Point number two related to this is like having a bad opinion of someone, su'u dhann, is the backbiting of the heart. Scholars say it's the backbiting of the heart. Sometimes backbiting is not haram. Okay. You guys didn't know this maybe. Like talking about someone behind their back in a way that they don't like is not always haram. It's generally haram. But like if you have to go to a court and lay out your case, you're going to have to speak about the other person, and it's not haram. If you have to go to a mufti and get an answer, you have to say certain things. It's not haram. If you have a problem with someone and you think that someone else can actually solve that problem, not just you're venting to them, but you think they can actually solve the problem, it's not haram to tell them the problem. Okay? So these are all, they're backbiting, but they're not technically haram. Another category of backbiting that's not technically haram is when someone is very open about a sin that they commit. So if someone's totally open about a sin that they commit, and you say that they do that thing, it's not backbiting. Is it a good thing to habituate ourselves to? That's a different question. Probably not. It's probably not a good habit to have. It's not a good habit to talk about other people anyways. But why I'm saying all of this is that it might be the case that someone's an oppressor. They're totally open about their oppression and their arrogance and how much they think they're better than other people and so on and so forth. And you have an interaction with them and you think, yeah, this person's arrogant. And you're totally valid in thinking that. Could be the case. That's why I'm saying all this. Does it make, see how those come together? Okay. So, yes, Taha.
I think I just feel like we have limits to our discipline. And that like consistently doing some of these things could potentially lead to like an explosion later on, right? Like, some right, like somebody cuts you off on the road, and instead of like verbally saying it in your mind, you're just like, screw it again, right? But because you say it in your mind, you know, you feel like, okay, like, at least I haven't verbalized it, or I haven't actually said it, that would cause like multiple, or, right? But like, now we're like, I can't even say it in my mouth, like, you know, like, it feels like it's just like, in a sense, you know, like. And like all these different things, right? If you're trying to be nice to your mom, if you're trying to like, on the road, and like, you're trying to not eat somebody, things like,
It's too hard. Now you took away food and road rage. And I have to be good to my parents. Like, it's too many things. Okay?
it's like, it starts.
They're human beings. In the end of the day, you're gonna make mistakes. Don't overthink it. Just do your best and don't overthink it. This is, we're talking about theory right now. That's what I'm saying. Like we're sitting and we're talking about theory. Okay, theory is one thing. You live life, you do your best. And you're gonna have days where like, yeah, you can't keep it in. But everything has consequences. Yeah, we're gonna screw the guy in our, say screw the guy in my head, you know? But that does become a habit, you know, for some people. And then it will lead to other things. So it's not saying like we have to fix everything at once, but you know, if something shouldn't be done, it shouldn't be done. How I get there, that's a different thing. Depends on how you define righteous people. Yeah. I mean, I think there's really amazing people who will probably have very good position with Allah in the hereafter, who have meltdowns. But if those meltdowns are oppressing other people, then maybe not. You know, depends. That person's gonna come. But these, again, these are all things, like part of it is that these are all things that we learn. We learn to respond in a particular way. And what's hard is that we have to unlearn things. You know, it doesn't have to be that way. It's interesting, like when you meet people from different places who have different, it's harder to find nowadays because the world is so connected. But still, you do meet people who like their life is just totally different. The way they think about things is completely different. The way they respond to things is completely different, you know. So we just try to be better, inshallah. When we talk about like righteous people, like the people that you read about stories about them 1,000 years later, probably not. But that's a different category of people. Yeah. They probably did in the beginning of their journey. Like they weren't just born and they were righteous. Somewhere along their journey, they probably had meltdowns and they had issues and they made mistakes and they had to apologize for them. Do things they weren't supposed to do and then make up for them afterwards. Get in an argument with their parents, even though they told themselves like 100 times, don't raise your voice at your parents. And then they got an argument, their parents, like it happens, you know? But we try to, we make mistakes. Again, came up yesterday in the session, right? Sheikh Farhan's session. We make mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes. The distinction is, do I turn back to Allah and try to fix my mistake or not? That's the distinction. If I do that over a period of time, then inshallah, the mistakes will change. I won't say they'll be less consequential, but they'll change. Yes, Muslim. All right. We have to wrap up soon, people. Muslim, maybe last question, inshallah. Or a comment. Gave him patience.
Hey, look, I'm in here for like, you're in here for things.
Yeah. Yeah. Allahu A'lam. I've heard the story. I think it's a true story. It's hard to summarize, but basically Imam Ahmed, when he was in prison, he was being tortured. There's another person who was being beaten also in prison, but he did something wrong. And the man basically told him, like, you're getting beaten because you stood up for truth. I'm being beaten because I did something wrong. But I have patience, you know, like you should have patience too, basically. And Imam Ahmed learned patience from him, this kind of thing. But yeah, of course. It's one thing about good people is that they'll take a lesson from anyone. They don't, it's not like I'm better than everyone else. I don't learn from anyone else. No. They learn wherever they can learn from. Uh, so yeah, Imam Ahmed took inspiration in that. The only thing is that I would say it's slightly different than what Taha's saying. Like they're not, like this is something that Imam Ahmed is struggling with inside. It's different than like, you know, breaking down or something. It's just a subtlety. I'm only saying that out of my reverence for Imam Ahmed. You know, he's one of the great Imams. It was an incredible person. I mean, what can you say about someone who wrote 1,000,000 hadith by hand? You know, Imam Ahmed wrote 1,000,000 hadith by hand. Not necessarily different hadith, but through repetition and different chains of narration and stuff like that. And subhanallah. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على سيدنا محمد اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى ونستنى بسترك الجميل ونستنى بسترك الجميل اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة قنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة اللهم اقض لنا حوائجنا ظاهرا وباطنا اللهم اقض لنا حوائجنا ظاهرا وباطنا يا عالم السر مننا تهلك الستر عنا وعافنا واعف عنا وكن لنا حيث كنا ايقظ قلوبنا لك ونبهنا من الغفلة عنك وجعلنا كل كلامنا لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله عدد كمال الله وكما يليق بكماله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.